Hi, welcome back to the third and final episode of High Performance Synthetic Strings. And if you need to watch my previous videos, I provided the video links below. As I mentioned in episode 2, some viewers suggested that I check out these three additional strings: Head Synthetic Gut, Gosen AK Pro CX, and Tecnifibre Multifeel. So after 4 weeks of playtesting and recording the string bed deflection and string tension readings, the results are in. Remember, string preference is subjective. So when I revealed the winner of the high performance synthetic string in episode 2, which was Wilson NXT Power, it was strictly based on the maintenance of string bed deflection and the tension readings. Also, some of you may have wondered why I included multifilament strings and synthetic gut strings. Well, technically they're both man-made, in other words synthetic, so I thought it was appropriate. The other reason is I wanted to compare them so players could decide what would work best for their game. Alright, now let's get into it. I started on court with the head synthetic gut. And if you don't know what a synthetic gut string is, it's a string with a solid core construction on the inside, and it has multifilament wraps on the outside. My overall experience with this is that it felt and sounded very tinny, and I found that the strings were getting stuck out of place, which I didn't like. Next we have the Gosen AK Pro CX. It's also a synthetic gut string. And of the 4 synthetic gut strings, I felt this was the firmest and it had good control. It has a slight texture and had the most ball to string friction. In fact, a couple of times when I hit a slice serve, I swear I thought I saw some felt flying in the air. This third string is Tecnifibre Multifeel. It's a multifilament string. Typically, multifilament strings are made of multiple microfilaments twisted together. However, this one is made with a monofilament core with 985 wraps twisted around the core. Of the 3 multifilament strings, this felt the softest and the most muted. Alright, so let's take a look at some readings on these 3 strings. Now during the 4 weeks, I did play with them for about 2 hours each racket, so it was the same amount of time as my episode 2 video. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the Tecnifibre Multifeel. And when it was mentioned to me by some of my viewers about the string, it was the 16 gauge that drew attention because of the numbers that I mentioned in episode 1. So I just assumed that the Tecnifibre Multifeel in the 17 gauge would be even better, but it wasn't the case. So I'll talk more about that later. So let's take a look at the initial readings and the day 1 reading. So the RDC is in the red and the ERT 700 is in the green. So you'll notice that every string, these 3, matched up perfectly. I mean, the 67s here and the 55. So that was nice to see. On day 1, however, it did change. So on the head synthetic gut and the Gosen AK Pro CX, they were comparable because you'll see that it dropped to 56 here, which is a 17%. And this was 58, which is at 14. The 51 here and the 51 both at 8%. But the multifeel dropped quite a bit on day 1. You can see that it went down to 53, which is 21%, and the 48, which is 13%. So let's look beyond that on the multifeel. So on week 1, you'll notice that it looks like it's starting to settle in, because then from this point on, from this 21, it goes to 24, 24, 24, and it stayed at 24. So it settled in after day 1, I guess. And then same with the string tension reading, it stayed at 13 here, and then it ended up at 15 here. So that was good to see that it actually settled in after week 1. Now the Gosen AK Pro CX, it was comparable to the head synthetic gut on day 1, and you'll notice that there's a drop from here to here, 5% difference, 8 to 13, and the 14 to 19. But then after week 1, similar to the other strings on episode 2, They did start to settle in, and it ended up at 13. And this went from 19 to the 21 there. So that was good to see there. Now, this head synthetic gut was interesting. And although it was comparable to the Gosen on day one, if you take a look at week one, the RDC is 56, which matched up, but then the ERT picked up on something here and it dropped to 48, which is the 13%. So, but what made it even more interesting, if you look at week two, it stayed at 48 here, but then the RDC reading came down to 51. So I don't know what happened between weeks 1 and 2 here. If I had another set of synthetic gut, head synthetic gut, I would test it again just to make sure what these readings were all about. But beyond week 2, it started to settle in. So this 13 ended up at 15 here, and this 24 ended up in 24. So based on these three strings and the maintenance of string bed deflection and string tension, it's the Gosen AK Pro CX that's a winner by a slight margin here. All right, so quick recap on the strings, and I did a chart here with all the strings covered in the 3 episodes. So as I mentioned, the Wilson NXT Power came out ahead for the high performance synthetic string that maintained the string bed deflection and the string tension the best. But string preference is subjective. So I did want to talk about each of the strings and what I experienced. And starting with the Wilson NXT Power, I mentioned that it does have a soft pocketing feel and good power. What I didn't like about it, it did actually fray the most out of the multifilaments that I tested. And another con is that the high cost of the string at $22. Now the head velocity MLT felt very similar to the NXT, but it had a less pop or power. But the good thing is that it's half the price of the NXT Power. So this is a good value for something that's similar to the NXT Power. Now we have a synthetic gut here, the Gosen AK Pro CX. It had the firmest feel compared to the other synthetic gut strings, and I like the control. What I didn't like so much was the high ball to string friction. It had a lot of ball fuzz that was on the strings, and I noticed that because of the textured surface, it did have some of that ball felt that was left on the string. So that actually reduced the snapback as the ball fuzz was getting stuck on the strings. Next we have the Prince Lightning Pro. And I have a note here that this under Tennis Warehouse University, on the string study that they did, for some reason they didn't do it in the 17 gauge. So this 5.5 is actually based off of the 16 gauge version of Lightning Pro. So I'm thinking that this 5.5 is probably higher, maybe higher 5s or maybe even 6. So I did want to note that there. Everything else I could pull a 17 gauge from the Tennis Warehouse University. It did have a firm feel, not as firm as the Gosen. But what I did like about it is that it had very good snapback, and it has a parafoil layer that's wrapped around the center core. So I think that helps with the ability to snap back. And I like this string for hybriding, especially because it does provide that snapback. The only con on this one is that on episode 2, remember I had that 1-day reading, and it had a pretty high tension drop. So I'm still experimenting with pre-stretching the Lightning Pro to see if that helps that drop. All right, now we're here on this Tecnifibre Multifeel. Now earlier I mentioned that it was pointed out to me that the 16 gauge Multifeel was a string that I should look at. The string potential on that one was 6.9, and the tension loss is 18%. So that fulfilled the requirement that I mentioned on episode 1. But when I pulled up the actual spin potential on the 17 gauge, it was 2.6. So that was kind of odd that a 17 gauge would be lower in spin potential, but I already had the string, so I figured I should go ahead and include it in this review. Uh, it was very similar to the MLT in terms of feel. I felt that it was a softest though compared to the other two multi-filaments. It is more expensive by a couple dollars at $13 than MLT. So between multi-feel and MLT, I couldn't really tell too much of a difference in feel, and you know, the MLT is coming out at a better value at $11. All right, next we have the head synthetic gut, and of the synthetic guts, it's the best value at $4, and it comes in 6 colors, which is nice because you typically want to have a synthetic gut in your inventory, especially in different colors, and that'll appeal to younger kids and sometimes women. He had a pretty good tension maintenance. It was very comparable to the Lightning Pro here. And what I didn't like about it was that it had a very tinny feel and sound to it. And the strings got stuck out of place after using it for a little while. So those are the two cons. But again, very good value at $4. And finally, we have the Babolat synthetic gut. It's a value option if you can't get head synthetic gut at $6. But I really wasn't connected with these strings at all. I felt like I didn't have any control, and the strings got stuck out of place. So here's my summary on all 7 of these strings. All right, so now that I completed my summary, I did want to summarize my summary. And I wanted to highlight the 3 strings that I felt stood out in this review. So let's take a look at the head velocity MLT. I think this is a string that stood out to me. And what I liked about it is that of the 3 multi-filaments, it came in at $11. So it's half the price of the Wilson NXT Power, and you know, it was a better value than the Tecnifibre Multifeel. So based on these 3 multi-filaments, I thought that stood out. Now I'm gonna have to go with my Prince Lightning Pro as the my second choice right here, because of the fact that it had really good snapback, and it's very good in using for a hybrating string. So I still like my Lightning Pro for that, and I still use it in a full bed. Then the third option would be head synthetic gut, because of the fact that it's coming in at $4, so that has the best value, and it has 6 colors, so you have a lot of options to choose from. Well, as you can see, I'm not quite done yet. I decided to take the rackets out back onto the court and have some fun. So what I did is I set up 3 different skills tests for myself, and this is all based on my serve. And this first one, I'm trying to kick it out wide, so I'm trying to get it in and make it hit the side fence. So what I did is I gave myself 3 chances for each of the strings in this play test. So I just failed on that first one, which was the head synthetic gut. The second racket that I picked up is the Gosen AK Pro CX. There's one, I think, it might be the third one. I think I almost got it. No, it's not that one. It might be this third one right here. Yeah, that one almost made it. It hit the fence on the second bounce. And this third racket is the Tecnifibre Multifeel. So again, I have 3 tries. And I got the bottom of that light post on that one. So, and that light post is right next to the fence, so I counted that one. And got it 2 times in a row. And I got one more try. All right, so that kick serve, the Tecnifibre Multifeel won that one. So this next one, I'm trying to serve it out wide and hit the side fence also. And I got it my first try. So this is the Gosen AK Pro CX strings. I went ahead and I did it for all the other strings, but that was the only one that I hit. So for the slice serve, the Gosen won that one. Now this third one was my flat serve, and it's not really my strength. So I did a couple takes, and I couldn't hit the target. So what I did there was I added a couple more cones to the target. What I did too is on the rackets, I changed the order for each of the 3 skills tests. So then that way it wouldn't be an unfair advantage to any of the strings. So I think this first one I'm using the Tecnifibre. Oh, that one just almost hit it. And the second racket is the head. Yeah, it's the head. Synthetic gut. And bad toss there. Right down the tee. I think I got it in, but obviously I'm trying to hit the target. And that one almost hit it. So I was close on that one. And that was pretty close. I think it was long though. All right, so I'm down to my last racket, and this is the Gosen AK Pro CX. Strike 1. Strike 2. Down to my last try here on this one. And I got the side cone on that one. Thanks for watching. Happy stringing. And let your strings play.